This week, we're going to talk about the endocrine system. The endocrine system is a system throughout your body composed of glands, endocrine glands, which are the organs of the endocrine system. The endocrine system functions sort of like the nervous system by sending messages throughout the body to kind of regulate activity, metabolism, growth, development, a lot of important body functions. It's different from the nervous system, even though it works with it, because the nervous system uses electrical impulses to send very quickly information, receive information, and send information. The endocrine system uses chemical messengers called hormones that travel through the bloodstream, typically take a little bit longer to work, and the effects last a little bit longer, but definitely works alongside the nervous system and similar function as the nervous system. Here's an image of most of the endocrine organs. Up on top here, you see the pituitary gland, also referred to as the master gland. This little small pea-shaped gland inside your brain receives information from the body, from the hypothalamus, which is another little gland in your brain, and it releases hormones that travel throughout the body and affect these other target organs. So the pituitary gland, the master gland, is kind of the control center for the endocrine system. The thyroid gland here in your neck, around your larynx, is an endocrine gland that receives information from the pituitary gland, and it regulates metabolism. So it affects basically every function in the body. It's a very important organ. Behind the thyroid gland, you have the parathyroid gland, which regulates some electrolyte levels like calcium and phosphorus, and it works like in conjunction with the thyroid gland. Your thymus gland in your chest here is an organ that is more a part of the immune system. It develops throughout childhood and then kind of shrinks through adulthood. But then you move down into the abdominal cavity, you have your pancreas. Your pancreas is an endocrine organ and an exocrine organ. The exocrine function is the release of digestive enzymes to help digest food. The endocrine functions are the release of insulin, somatostatin, and glucagon to regulate blood sugar, digestion of carbohydrates, fats, proteins. And then over here on top of each kidney, you have an adrenal gland. The adrenal gland is made up of a cortex and a medulla. This secretes like cortisol, mineral corticoids, and glucocorticoids like cortisol, and helps to regulate fight or flight. So like in situations where you need a lot of energy. Also helps regulate things like blood sugar, digestion, fat metabolism. And then down at the bottom, you have your ovaries and your testes, which are the male and female gonads. These are definitely very important for sexual reproduction, maturation of secondary sexual characteristics, regulation of estrogen, testosterone, all that stuff. This is a nice image here that kind of demonstrates what we were talking about, how this pituitary gland, the master gland in your brain, sends signals to each of these other glands of the endocrine system. So, and this lists actually the hormone that is secreted. So the pituitary gland will secrete adrenocorticotropic hormone, which affects the adrenal cortex. Thyroid stimulating hormone, which affects the thyroid gland. Antidiuretic hormone affects the kidneys. Prolactin affects the mammary glands and the breast tissue, and so forth. And kind of reiterating what we already said. So the hypothalamus, this small gland above the pituitary gland, is actually secreting hormones that are affecting the pituitary gland, which secrete hormones that affect those target organs of the endocrine system. So it's called a negative feedback system. The conditions in your body change, and then those messages are sent to your brain where it recognizes the changes and the need for endocrine regulation, and then the pituitary gland acts in response by either sending more of these hormones or less to initiate or stop the secretion of other hormones. Some combining forms you're going to need for this chapter: adreno, referring to the adrenal glands; cortico, cortex, or the cortex portion of the adrenal gland. Endocrino is referring to endocrine. That one seems self-explanatory. Acro means extremities. Calci is calcium. Dipso is thirst. Glyco is sugar. Kali means potassium. Natro is sodium. There's definitely some more listed in the book. And prefixes and suffixes. So prefix U is normal. So euglycemia would be a normal blood sugar. Pan is total. Syn would be together or joined. And then suffixes. So drome is running or run. Emia referring to the blood. Megaly is enlargement. Plasia, growth and development. Again, there are definitely more listed in the book. Some disease and disorder terms from this chapter listed here. Acromegaly. So we said acro was extremities, right? Megaly is enlargement of the extremities, and the face. This is typically due to a growth hormone problem. Endocrinopathy is any disease of the endocrine system. Hypercalcemia is elevated calcium level in the blood. Hypocalcemia would be a low calcium level in the blood. Hyperglycemia is referring to elevated blood sugar. Hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. Hyperkalemia is referring to potassium. Hypernatremia referring to sodium. Hyperthyroidism is referring to an overactive thyroid or increased levels of thyroid hormone in the blood. And hypothyroidism is the opposite. So people with hyperthyroidism have a high metabolism. Everything is running really high. Even their body temperature is elevated. Hypothyroidism is the opposite. People are very slow, low energy, weight gain, swelling, stuff like that. Hyperpituitarism is overactive of the pituitary gland, which can affect all of the endocrine system. So hyperpituitarism can manifest in many different ways. It might be hyperthyroidism. It might be problems with the adrenal glands, with the reproductive organs, with the, anything in the endocrine system. It's not specific to one, because the pituitary gland is the master gland, remember. And hypo would be the opposite. So a decreased secretion of these endocrine hormones. All right, some more disease and disorder terms. So Addison's disease is a pretty rare endocrine disorder characterized by a decrease or insufficient production of adrenal hormones like cortisol and aldosterone. These help to regulate body functions, respond to fight or flight situations. So these people will have decreased blood pressure, decreased ability to respond appropriately to stressful situations, darkening of the skin, loss of appetite. It's a problem with their adrenal cortex. Fun fact, JFK had this disorder. Cushing syndrome. Cushing syndrome is an overproduction or oversecretion of cortisol, which is one of those adrenal hormones. So these people will get swelling, swelling of their face, swelling of the back, muscle wasting, bone weakness, a ton of signs and symptoms that are pretty detrimental. Elevated blood sugar. This can also be caused by someone taking steroids, oral steroids like prednisone, for a long period of time. Diabetes mellitus is a problem with the pancreas. It's unable to produce insulin, which is the hormone used to regulate blood sugar, pushes blood sugar, glucose into the cells to be used for energy. So they either don't have any insulin or not enough insulin. So their blood sugar is high. It comes with all kinds of signs and symptoms. We usually treat these people with insulin injections. Diabetes insipidus, it sounds like diabetes, but it's completely different. It does not affect your blood sugar. It affects your hydration status. These people urinate an extreme amount and they can't stay hydrated. Gigantism is related to overproduction of growth hormone, and they grow really large, bones, muscles, everything. Graves' disease is an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid and causes hyperthyroidism. Eventually may lead to hypothyroidism after enough damage is done, but typically Graves' disease is thought of as hyperthyroid disorder. Myxedema is a condition of very, very low thyroid hormones. So these people have like no energy, very swollen, very slow. You could even die from this. Thyrotoxicosis is an extreme elevation of thyroid hormone, which can cause all kinds of signs and symptoms, but can also cause things like heart attack, stroke, super high blood pressure, super high heart rate, extremely dangerous condition related to hyperthyroidism. And some complementary terms. So euglycemia means normal blood sugar. Polydipsia, poly much, dipsia is thirst. So increased thirst. Often we're going to use this term with diabetes insipidus or diabetes mellitus. They're very thirsty because they can't stay hydrated. Endocrinologist is someone who studies and treats diseases of the endocrine system. A syndrome is signs and symptoms occurring together that are characteristic of a specific disorder. So like Cushing's syndrome is a whole bunch of signs and symptoms that we relate to that elevated cortisol level. Exophthalmos, protrusion of the eyes. So their eyes kind of stick out, stay wide open. This is typical for people who have hyperthyroidism. A hormone is a chemical messenger used by the endocrine system to send and receive messages. And lastly, some abbreviations. So DI is diabetes insipidus. DKA is diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a severe complication of diabetes mellitus. DM is diabetes mellitus. SIADH is symptom of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone. So antidiuretic hormone regulates how much you urinate. This is an endocrine disorder. ACTH is adrenocorticotropic hormone. It's a hormone that stimulates the adrenal glands. ADH is antidiuretic hormone. Again, targets the kidneys, affects how much you urinate. FBS is fasting blood sugar. So it's your blood sugar after you haven't eaten for like 8 hours. Normal blood sugar is about 60 to 110. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. This affects those reproductive organs like ovaries. GH is growth hormone. And there are a lot more in the book. There are a lot more disease and disorders that we didn't go over in the book. This is a very interesting chapter, so I definitely suggest you guys read, study, use the practice stuff in your textbook, and good luck.